Welcome to another episode of the Confessions of a Recovering Landlord podcast, where you'll learn the secrets commercial landlords would prefer you not know. I'm your host, Jan Gibbons, along with my co-host and experienced commercial real estate broker, Bob Gibbons.
That's me.
Brought to you by Riata Commercial Realty, where we exclusively represent users of office and warehouse properties. Landlords have representation. Do you? Welcome to another episode of the Confessions of a Recovering Landlord. This time it's going to be Confessions of a Recovering Convention Goer, though, I think. Wouldn't that be a little more accurate?
Probably.
Likes to attend all the SIOR conferences, which stands for Society of Industrial and Office Realtors, or as we call it, Drunken Weekend, right? Isn't that, or maybe there's some learning that goes on. I don't know.
It wasn't a weekend.
Oh, well, right. It was Wednesday to Saturday. So, okay, not a full weekend.
Yeah, and the Saturday is pretty much almost nobody. Well, I shouldn't say almost nobody, but not very many. But yeah, SIOR conference. It was.
Are you able to share some gems, some sober gems?
It was in Chicago this time, and it was a really good one as always. I've only been to 3 of them now, but I've realized that the spring conference is.
Oh, you was singing all right.
is the smaller one, and then the one in the fall is the bigger one. And so the one in Dallas was my first one, and it had about 1,200 people. This one had about 1,200 people. I think the spring conference in Montreal had maybe 800 or 900, but still, big. But yeah, there were so many different things that were good. I mean, the most important thing, of course, at any conference is who you meet and network with. And yeah. I mean, I was in one meeting where we had people, and this was the tenant rep subgroup. So, you have SIOR, which is the big organization. And then you have all these different sort of subgroups: industrial brokers, office brokers, tenant rep brokers, independent brokers, young professionals, et cetera. And
how was that young professional?
They tell me it was good. But I was in this one tenant rep group meeting, and we had people from all over the US, of course, Canada, Mexico, China, Japan, Ireland,
That's
Germany.
Amazing.
I mean, it went on, and I think we had 8 or 9 countries, 9 or 10 countries represented in the room. And it was really cool to hear people's experiences from all over the world, and how similar what we deal with is, and yet also how differently people do business in other places. And the cool thing about this is that, if I have a client that needs help in anywhere in the world, there are only around 3,700 members of SIOR worldwide now. And so I know that all those people, all those individuals are people that have been performing at a high level, that are very experienced, because to become a member, you have to have achieved a certain level of production over a certain number of years, and it's not easy. So it's it's good to know. I don't know all of them, of course, but it's good to know that if I need somebody someplace that I'm not used to working, I can pick up the SIOR directory and find somebody and already know immediately that they're highly qualified.
Expands your reach.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. But anyway, I think the first thing, there were lots of different meetings, of course, like there is in any conference. You have your keynotes and all that kind of thing. But the first keynote speaker of the conference was Peter Diamandis, and
Peter, he's kind of a nationally known motivational speaker on all levels. He's not esoteric to CRE.
Oh, no, he's definitely not specific to CRE, but I wouldn't even call him a motivational speaker, though. He's more of a futurist thinker, thought leader kind of guy. He talked a lot about all kinds of things dealing with AI and things that are coming up. I mean, he even made the comment that AI is probably the most significant technology breakthrough or development since electricity, which is like, whoa.
He didn't look that old to me.
He's younger than I am. That's yeah, I was pretty shocked by that. But anyway, one of the things that he said that really stuck to me with me was he said, systemize the routine so you can humanize the exceptional. So, you know, a lot of people are really fearful of AI and is it going to take my job and blah, blah, blah. So he's like, yeah, I mean, it is going to take some people's jobs, but the way you make sure it's not going to take your job is systemize the routine. Anything that's just repeatable that can be done by a machine, let the machine do it. And you humanize what's exceptional. And, you know, we've had this statement for many years called manage by exception. So you only deal with the things that are different or unusual or need special care.
It's Steve Jobs' turtleneck.
Explain that.
Well, he wanted to use his brain power for just, you know, Apple, Macintosh, always thinking that way. So he systematized his life to the point of no decisions had to be made for living. So every morning he got up and put on a black turtleneck and blue jeans. That decision was made. I'm sure he had 9,000 of them. Yeah. But it was the same thing. He never thought, I'm wearing the pink one today. It was just the same thing. Yeah. So I think that's kind of, on a very simplistic level, what Peter was talking about.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's Elon Musk, you know, the black t-shirt.
Yeah.
A lot of the really highest performing people in the world, just, they have a uniform. They never think about it.
Right.
And so anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. There was another meeting where two sales guru guys were on the stage together. So one's a guy named Mike Lipsey, and Mike is kind of your old school sales trainer kind of guy, and Rod Santamassimo, who's more of the commercial real estate coach. Now, it's interesting because they both were actual brokers in the commercial real estate business. They both built their companies, sold their companies, and became either a sales trainer or coach. And they did a joint presentation, which was kind of interesting because you got sort of old school, new school there together at the same time. And one of the things that was cool is that Rod was talking about how within 6 months, he thinks that all of us are going to have our physical beings digitized. The way we look in 3D, the way we speak, everything's going to be digitized so that we can then use that when making presentations, reaching out to people. So if I want to go pitch a company, instead of doing a generic video to reach out to whatever company, I can send an individual email with an individual video to each person in the company that I want to try and reach: CEO, CFO, COO, Chief Human Officer, CIO. I mean, all these people can get their own customized videos, and it looks like it's me, it sounds like it's me, but I actually didn't record any of those. I just put in text, and it generates this sort of a deep fake almost, but it's actually me digitized in my voice, and it's authorized. And I
digitized my voice to sound like Whitney Houston.
That's not your voice.
I know.
And I wouldn't want it to be.
Oh, I would just once.
Well, maybe if you're going to sing me a lullaby or something. Anyway, what's interesting is that they actually showed a video where this is actually happening already. And it
gets through the email. I mean, I can just see this hitting the spam filter going, and they never see it.
Well, they didn't go into that. Yeah, they didn't go into that level of details. So, but I think you make a good point that how is this stuff going to be delivered if it's being delivered to somebody who doesn't know you?
Right.
So yeah, now hopefully you've gotten some warm introduction to the company, and they're expecting it or something. I don't know. That was pretty amazing. Let's see if there was anything else from that one.
Well, you were going to talk about Molly Fletcher.
Yeah, let me mention her. She's an interesting person because she is a sports agent, and she's
handled. Show me the money.
She's handled a lot of people that you would name. You would know the name, and she had a book that she wrote. They were giving that out for free, but anyway, the thing that was interesting, she told this story about how she represented this college football coach from, I think, University of Florida or something. And she heard about a vacancy coming up in the NFL and thought he would be perfect for that team. I want to say the Jaguars, if I'm not mistaken. So this guy from the University of Florida is, she's putting him up for that coaching job at the Jaguars in Jacksonville. No, Carolina, Jacksonville Jaguars. Anyway, doesn't matter. So she calls him up.
Something over there on the East Coast. It ain't the Texas Rangers. We don't care.
And it's not baseball. Anyway, so she calls him up and says, "Hey, is this of interest?" And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And so, long story short, she helps him negotiate a contract where he's going to be the highest paid NFL coach ever. And he's never coached in the NFL. He's only coached in college.
Moving from college to NFL, and
I know, that was surprising. Anyway, they do a press conference on Thursday. Well, Friday, he goes back home to Florida. And Saturday morning, she gets a call saying, "I don't think I'm coming." And she's like, "What are you talking about? We just negotiated this great deal. You said you wanted to be in the NFL." And he goes, "I do. I had to go back to the university yesterday and tell all my players that I was leaving, and tell my athletic director I was leaving, and the president of the university." And she said that she had made a huge mistake because she had avoided a difficult conversation. Mm-hmm. And by avoiding saying to him, "Are you prepared to go and tell these kids that you have been mentoring like a father for years, that you're leaving them?" Mm-hmm. And how, you taught them how to be such a great team, and you're leaving the team. How are you going to handle that? And she never had that conversation with him. She never prepared him for that. And so she had to go back to the NFL team and unwind this deal.
Oh my gosh.
After they've already announced it to the world.
All that work and no commission for her. But you know what? Lesson learned.
Well, she probably negotiated his contract with the university, so she was probably okay.
But it wasn't in the same zip code as that one in the NFL.
Yeah, but college coaches get a lot.
They do, but not NFL money.
I just thought that was interesting. Her point was, don't avoid difficult conversations, because it just delays the problem. Mm-hmm. It'll still come up. It just delays it. So just get it done up front so you don't have to deal with it later. And that's for, your personal life, your business life, whatever. I thought that was really important information. I would say the last thing I want to mention is there was a breakout session for the tenant rep group, and it was about lease hacks. So ways to negotiate leases that were, there was a panel up there with a couple of tenant reps, an attorney. One of the tenant reps also was a lawyer, by the way, and then also a landlord rep. And so it was kind of this, a little bit of sparring between how we'd like to negotiate things. And there was a few things that came out. They talked a lot about subleases, security deposits, landlord's consent with the sublease. And one of the things they really talked about was that if you're going to sublease space, you're the subtenant, you want to have what's called a stand in the shoes clause in your landlord consent document. So just for those listening, if they aren't familiar, you have a sublease. So the primary tenant leases the building from the landlord. They don't need the space anymore. Now they go out and sublease it, and they sign a sublease between the primary tenant and the subtenant. The landlord has to consent to that. So in that consent document, one of the recommendations was that you put in language that says, if the primary tenant blows up, goes away, quits paying the rent, goes into default, whatever, that the subtenant can now stand in the shoes of that tenant. Basically, they take over the lease, the primary lease. That doesn't mean that they get to continue paying the rent as a subtenant anymore. They have to step into the shoes of the primary tenant and pay whatever the landlord was getting paid by the primary tenant and assume all their obligations. But that may be better than the alternative, which is to have your sublease canceled and you have to move somewhere else. So
So
that
how
was
realistic is that though? Because now the landlord is going to underwrite that subtenant in order to have that clause put in the lease, the sublease, as if they were the primary tenant.
theoretically they should be doing that anyway. So the landlord has the right to review the credit of the subtenant and approve them anyway. But you're right, it would sort of raise the bar of the amount of scrutiny that they would have, because at that point they're assuming that the primary tenant's gone away and they don't have that as the backstop on that. So that was one thing that was interesting. The other thing they suggested was whenever you get a SNDA, a subordination, non-disturbance, and atonement agreement, which is simply an agreement by the lender on the building that if they ever foreclose on the building, they're not going to terminate the lease. This is the primary lease, that you put into the primary lease language that basically says that our security deposit, which is normally held by the landlord and is not required to be in a separate account, therefore is just in the landlord's sort of working capital accounts. If the landlord goes bankrupt or has the building foreclosed, that vanishes and the tenant no longer has a security deposit. So they're saying in the SNDA from the lender, you put in language that says that the security deposit will be honored by the lender if they foreclose the building. Now, again, you're going to have a big tenant to get this in that language. They also suggested that, whenever you negotiate a sublease, then you have to send it to the landlord for their consent. Well, you want to be able to know that they're going to respond within a reasonable period of time. And, if they don't, what happens? So if they don't consent, does that mean the sublease is dead? They're suggesting that you put language in there that says, if they don't consent within a certain period of time, then it's an automatic approval. Now, again, this has to be put into the original lease, the primary lease, not the sublease.
I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Going back to the SNDA, you said that is applicable for a landlord foreclosing on the building.
For a lender. For a lender.
For a lender. What happens if the landlord takes bankruptcy? Does that change anything?
Well, the landlord taking bankruptcy is not foreclosure. Therefore, the lease is still intact. So, at that point, if they sell the building, let's say out of foreclosure, the landlord sells the building
out of bankruptcy, not
out of bankruptcy. Sorry, then you're still selling the building subject to all the leases. It's just that whenever a lender forecloses, that gives the lender special opportunities to reject any leases they don't want. It's kind of like, well, and same thing, if a tenant goes bankrupt and they go into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, as WeWork just did today, I think, then they have the right to terminate any leases they don't like. So you can expect right now that WeWork is about to start terminating leases as fast as the bankruptcy court will approve them, because anything that's underperforming locations, they're going to just terminate those leases. And the landlord's going to be left, with an empty floor or however big the thing was. I mean, some of the WeWork locations were entire buildings. They were the largest tenant in New York City. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. One other thing that on the SNDA, as long as we're talking about that, make it a contingency, which means the lease will not be in effect unless you get that SNDA from the lender. Many landlords will try and say, we'll use commercially reasonable efforts to get the lender to provide that, which basically means, hey, if it doesn't happen, too bad, lease still in force. So if it's really critical and you're able, you're a tenant that's big enough to get an SNDA in the first place, make sure that it's contingent, that the lease is contingent on getting that, not, hey, we'll try. So anyway,
Wimpy on the old Popeye cartoon show. I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
I mean, there were a lot of other things, but I'll leave it at that. It's it's a great organization. I always learn a lot. I meet a lot of interesting people. And in fact, one of the things that's kind of cool from it is that several people that are tenant reps from around the country have decided to create a mastermind. So we're going to meet once a month just to talk about sort of how to do things better and
best
ideas.
And, yeah, I love that.
How to serve clients. In fact, we have the first meeting in 30 minutes, and so I'm really I'm looking forward to it. And I mean, we have people from coast to coast. They're all in the U.S. in this particular one, but we might add people later on.
That's the thing I like about these conventions. You think, oh, it's just a drunken brawl. You go and you have fun. The fellowship, the comradeship, the learning, it goes on. It's not just those 4 days. It's a time to bond the relationship and learn in person, but it cements something that goes throughout the whole year. And I see that in people you reach out to, and you've got someone moving here. I don't have any market data. Oh, I know someone, and he's there, and he'll call, and it just expands your reach exponentially.
Yeah, it really does. And, you joke about the drunken thing, but I mean, there are a lot of happy hours going on. I mean, literally one day there was one at 5:30, then there were dinners, then there was another one at 9, 11, and one at 11 goes. I think there was one that started at midnight one night, and I didn't go to a lot of them. In fact, I didn't go to anything that started after 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I think. But
that's the part that cracked me up. When you first went, you told me that there were some guys that said, come out and go. So you went out and went, and then they went to something later, and you're like, hey, thanks, I'll catch you later. And you saw them the next morning, and you're like, oh, did you go to the later one? And they're like, which later one? There was one at 9, 11, and 1. And they were bright and chipper and ready to go.
Well, I've seen a couple of guys that weren't very chipper. But yeah, it's but I don't see anybody really fall down drunk or anything. They're there, they're networking, they're talking
too hard, to get there.
Yeah,
you don't waste that opportunity.
Exactly.
Well, we're glad you had fun. We're glad you're going back again. Thanks for sharing all you learned with our lovely audience.
See you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening. And just a reminder to send in questions to see if we can stump Bob.
Not going to happen.
We really appreciate your taking the time to tune into this episode. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to this on. And if you are on our YouTube channel, we would love to read your feedback in the comment section. Also, be sure to subscribe so you get notified when we publish new episodes. Thanks, and see you next time.
Bye.